Hello friends, welcome to lesson 5, models of gendered socialization, cultural symbolism and gender roles. Introduction. Gender socialization is a process by which individuals develop, refine and learn to do gender through internalizing gender norms and roles as they interact with key agents of socialization such as family, social networks and other social institutions. The importance of understanding gender socialization is in addressing gender inequality and gender discrimination, which have harmful consequences for people in the society. Understanding the formation of this discrimination promotes sustainable development goals in reducing gender inequality and increasing more opportunities for women. It is a great achievement for society to move towards sustainable and comprehensive development and reduce any kind of inequality. Gender equality would be supported by recognizing the agents and factors that have formed unfair gender social norms and also improving awareness of the social fact that gender roles and norms are not natural and are socially constructed. Objectives. After completion of this lesson, you will be able to understand the different models of gendered socialization. You will be able to describe cultural symbolism and how gender roles are shaped by it. Let us begin by discussing about gender socialization. To understand gender socialization, it is significant to understand what socialization is and why socialization is so important for society. The term socialization refers to a process by which individuals of a given society learn the skills, behavior patterns, standards, customs and values of the society. In other words, people learn how they can be a successful member of their social or cultural group and adapt themselves to the society where they live through socialization. All societies and communities have this process for their members, and people who have not gone through this process are hardly accepted by the community. It is the process through which society transfers culture to the next generation and teaches the social and cultural roles that society expects from individuals. Through this process, people understand what behavior, beliefs and lifestyles are acceptable to the community. Also, through this process, individuals find their own functions in society as a member. However, this process is not simply transmitted from one generation to other. Rather, they are to some extent at least constructed by each generation. It can be said that one of the main goals of socialization is institutionalization of the values, beliefs and standards of the society for all members of a given group. Socialization can help one to predict how people behave, think and feel in a group or society. Ryle suggests that to understand gender socialization, we need to explain two constructs: gender roles and gender identity. Gender norms are rules which a given society has considered as appropriate for females and males. According to these norms, gender identity is understanding women and men of themselves in a given society. So, gender socialization is a process to transfer these gender norms and rules to new generations according to their culture. Therefore, women and men internalize gender norms as their own gender identity. In fact, Society defines different social roles for women and men, that is called gender roles. These gender roles can be one of the main factors for gender domination over women in the patriarchal system. After gender roles, another concept that can help to understand gender socialization is gender stereotypes, which are universal and have proven resistant to change. For example, according to these stereotypes, girls are expected to be clean and quiet, but expectations for boys are different, and it seems that being messy and loud are normal for boys because the society has this expectation from boys' identity. As children get older, these expectations will find new faces for men and women. Gender stereotypes become more apparent in styles of dress and makeup, choice of leisure activities, and professional jobs. Gender stereotypes claim that women and men have naturally different attitudes, traits, and abilities. For instance, it is assumed that men are aggressive, independent, and strong, whereas women are kind, sympathetic, and vulnerable. Society uses these stereotypes to separate women and men in social networks and work settings and has limited women to specific roles. Moreover, gender stereotypes provide additional legitimacy to gender norms and identity. In general, gender stereotypes encourage or force girls and boys to act in certain ways. Although gender socialization is a universal matter, other social changes in human societies are changing this process, gender roles, and the identity of women and men in general. These changes are due to structural changes in economic and social systems. For example, during Second World War, it was necessary for women to be in labor market. So many women worked in factories, and that changed typical roles that was considered for women. Immigration and increased population mobility, education and technology can create new responsibilities and roles for women and therefore challenge traditional roles for women. Indeed, these changes question traditional gender identities and gender roles and show new social roles and responsibilities for women in the society. As a result, social changes have increased people's information, skills and social supports, indicating that it was a positive factor to challenge gender norms in different societies. The subordinate position of women has a close relationship with women's identity and gender roles. Any woman who challenges her subordinate status must be by definition be challenging her status as a woman even if she does not intend to. Positive change to our gender norms would involve getting rid of the necessarily subordinate feminine gender. Let us now discuss about different models of gendered socialization. First is biological theory. In this theory, biological differences between women and men are the main factors for explanation of gender socialization. This theory emphasizes on gender identity formation based on sex and does not define sex and gender separately. So, biological theory arguments used against gender equality are fundamentally biological ones. The biological theory tries to understand differences between women and men through biological basis. Sociologists believe in the importance of physical and biological differences between women and men as the factors for gender roles. Hines believes that women and men are affected by different hormones which may have different functions for the brain of women and men. So, this theory explains that people accept different roles because of different biological functions that their bodies have as women or men. From this perspective, social influences are not significant in forming gender identity, while biological factors are very important. However, social scientists consider that many aspects of gender roles, identities and behaviors are the result of social influences, not biological differences. In fact, decades of research make this clear that nurture has a more significant role in differences between men and women than nature. When we discuss about psychoanalytic theory, this theory has its roots in Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis in late 19th and early 20th centuries and focuses on experiences that influence children from the early years about their gender and sexuality. Freud explains the Oedipus complex for analysis of differences between women and men. The theory of psychosexual stages of development of Sigmund Freud explains the source of libido, that is life force, is concentrated in the erogenous zones of child's body, and children experience an unconscious feeling of desire for their opposite sex parent and jealousy and envy toward their same sex parent. He believes that girls cannot resolve Oedipus complex and have a weaker superego. There are many critics of this theory. Some of Freud's students were strong critics and developed the alternatives for analysis of gender differences. In this evolution of Freudian thought, girls and boys have strong relationship with their mother, and both girls and boys identify themselves as a female in the first years of life, but when boys become older and more independent, they strongly try to avoid female roles and accept roles that society defines as masculine. Moreover, gender socialization in new psychological theories place an emphasis on a parental reaction as main factor to forming children's behaviors. There is also a very interesting theory of social learning theory. This theory explains gender roles through the notion of modeling and learning of behaviors. Children develop gender type behaviors by copying behaviors of other females and males in their own life. This theory emphasizes on learning process of gender roles through observation. Children learn appropriate gender type behavior defined by society by observing others. But this is not only observation, they receive rewards for proper behavior. So, children are encouraged to follow appropriate gender type behaviors, and this reinforces gender roles. In fact, gender socialization has developed through rewarding of children to follow sex typed behaviors. However, intersectionality studies argue that social learnings are complicated. Intersectionality research builds on social learning theories to show that people have multiple identities according to their location, background, history and time in the process of gender socialization. In fact, gender socialization is not only based on gender but also race, class, sexual identity and other social and economic factors. The learning process is not in the same way for all women and men. They pass social learning processes for gender socialization from different backgrounds. So, an African American woman has a different experience for learning gender roles than a white American in the USA or an Indian woman because of other identities and social factors that she has faced as a woman of color. Let us now discuss about cognitive development theory. Cognitive development theory explains the gender roles according to the growth stages of a child when she or he starts to understand her or his identity in the society. This theory tries to explain how children understand and interpret the world around them and act in the society. This theory explains that first, children can identify their own gender as a girl or boy, then they can recognize the gender of others. This theory argues that actual gender typing forms at the age of 6 or 7 years when they reach to an insight that recognizes gender constancy and involves in gender roles and identify themselves as female and male. In its simplest terms, gender constancy refers to the theory that children develop a sense of a gender over time and eventually come to understand that their biological sex is fixed and permanent. This theory has originated from the work of American psychologist Lawrence Kohlberg. According to this theory, a child has developed a strong notion of gender constancy, the understanding that one is either a boy or a girl, and this categorization will not change. So, this cognition is not neutral. They recognize women and men's roles based on what society has defined. Let us now try to understand gender schema theory. This theory is developed by Sandra Bem, American psychologist known for her works in androgyny and gender studies. Bem explains that gender schematic is generalized readiness on the part of the child to encode and to organize information, including information about the self according to the culture's definition of maleness and femaleness. So, gender schema theory shows how schemas are used as guides to teach different gender roles to girls and boys. According to gender schema theory, children come to understand themselves in terms of gender attributes they encounter in real life and to no lesser extent through picture books. This theory uses a complex and a multidimensional lens to explain how gender identity forms in children and adults. This theory explains that children develop increasingly more elaborate gender schemas as they develop their gender identity and their understanding of gender roles. As children come across information or new situations that pertain to gender, they tend to use their gender schemas as a guide for interpreting this information and a way to simplify information and to make decisions. This theory can explain why children select specific toys or model certain behaviors. This theory emphasizes on the process of learning gender roles and gender stereotypes. Let us now discuss the second part of this lesson, which is about cultural symbolism. It is the social and cultural construction of roles, tasks, attitudes, values and qualities of males and females. The formation of gender differs from one culture to other as it is a culture specific aspect. The community or society as a whole contributes to the definition of gender. From the material perspective, from various cultures and societies, anthropologists were able to take on a critical stand towards existing myths of gender construction and patriarchy, such as the nature-culture debate, the concept of biological determinism and public-private dichotomy. Gender was seen as one of the prime yet cultural constructs that had a powerful effect on organizations of social relationships, particularly manifested in the almost all pervasive existence of patriarchy. The assumption of a universal patriarchy gave rise to feminism as a theory and a movement, but anthropology has constantly engaged in a concerned relationship with feminist theories, often making important contributions of its own based again on the cross-cultural perspectives. Anthropologists have shown that concepts formulated in a Western context often have different meanings and implications in different cultures, like patriarchy may operate at a completely different dimension than as understood in the West, or the meaning of terms like public and private may differ as economies and societies are organized along completely different premises. In some cultures, gender deals with women's supposed vulnerability, their identity as the second sex or fairer sex, and their need to be protected. The main gender difference is basically in the biological function of reproduction. Barbara McManus, feminist writer, also argued that feminist scholars have been differentiating sex from gender and view the latter as socially or culturally constructed category. She asserts that gender is learnt and performed. It involves the myriad and often normative meanings given to sexual difference by various cultures. She opines that feminists may differ in the importance they assign to sex, which is a biologically based category, but the idea that gender norms can be changed is central to feminist theory. The theoretical framework of gender needs to be drawn further from Margaret Mead, the American cultural anthropologist, and Simone de Beauvoir, French philosopher and the feminist. Mead revealed how behavior of men and women differed from one culture to another, and thereby challenged the notion that all gender differences were innate. On the other hand, Beauvoir argued that the division of the sexes is a biological fact, not an event in human history. Male and female stand opposed and women has not broken it. The couple, man and woman, is a basic unity with its two halves riveted together, and the cleavage of society along the line of sex is impossible. The critical trait of women is that she is the other in a totality of which the two components are essential to one another. Beauvoir argued that woman is heavily handicapped, though her situation is beginning to change gradually. Despite the constitutional guarantees, Indian women do not enjoy absolute legal and equal rights with men. People have gender biases and culture of patriarchy that are deeply entrenched in the society. In Beauvoir's view, both men and women can also be said to make up two castes from economic perspective. Other things being equal, the former hold better jobs, get higher wages and have more opportunity for the success than their new competitors. She asserted that in industry and politics, men have more positions and they monopolize the most important posts. Today, women are beginning to take part in the affairs of the world, but it is still a world that belongs to men. In India, our culture upholds that respectable women are sensitive, caring, dresses decently and speak softly, which are considered as core values to make women more feminine. On the other hand, power and authority are traits commonly held by Indian men. The men are perceived to dominate the activities related to economics. The economy mode largely determines the social position of men and women, wherein men are the center of family and society, whereas women are a part of property of men. Such type of gender stereotype creates a negative impact on women's lives. Nevertheless, it is a fact that gender stereotypes are dynamic and not static. It is influenced by ideology and economic situation of a particular era. Both men and women carry out their responsibilities according to the division of the innate characteristics of gender. Gender stereotypes, which are cultural, are reflected in cultural institutions in marriage, family and community. The division between femininity and masculinity represents the Indian traditional model where differences between genders are often exaggerated. Both genders, men and women, are biologically determined and unchangeable, wherein they are distinct with separate spheres of influence and qualities. Hence, the discourse on transgender, gays and lesbians are not accepted at ease in India. At the same time, masculinity is more highly valued in our culture and it is expressed through certain characteristics like chivalry, power, courage, boldness, achievement, invention and poise, which are perceived as being inherent to them. These qualities have been acknowledged as masculine in biological as well as physiological aspects, but it seems to be changing. It is perceived that the contributions of femininity and masculinity are different, but it should be valued in the same way. It is important to point out that Hindu masculine cultural values refer to spirit of struggle, wealth, competition, goal, power and authority. Intriguingly, the feminine cultures give emphasis to additional value on relationships between people and attributes of life. On the other hand, the masculine cultures highlight the differences between gender roles, which are more dramatic as compared with feminine cultures, wherein men and women possess similar values emphasizing compassion and humility. It allows us to reflect and perceive new ideas of gender, sexuality and religion. India stands for unity in diversity wherein every ethnic group and caste is different from each other. But we tend to believe that deep inside all people are same, especially when the question of sexuality arises. In this sense, we tend to minimize the cultural differences with regard to sexuality. Culture and structure gets reproduced over generation after generation. Changes in cultural traits and social structures do occur either from within the society or forced and adopted from outside. However, for a very long period, these changes coexist with older or traditional patterns and show a spatial difference in their manifestation. This is quite evident in the context of rural-urban patterns that reflect this kind of coexistence to some degree. As we have discussed in our first lesson, Leela Dubé, one of the pioneers in the field of gender studies, is of the view that in a patriarchal patrilineal society like ours in India, gender roles start taking shape very early in life. The difference in the enthusiasm of parents at the birth of male and female child is keenly observed by the female child and is internalized, which becomes part of her psyche. Later in life, she observes her mother, grandmother and other female members in the society and tries to become like them in order to gain acceptance in the family and in society at large. The very notion of women being pariah dhan or someone else's property, that is our largely held in our patriarchal society, also contributes towards constructing the gender identity that leads to discrimination and subordination. A woman is never regarded as a permanent member of her natal family, as she has to leave that family and move to her husband's house culturally. This gives rise to belief that she will never contribute to the family income and instead she will take away certain part of the family income as her dowry. In contrast, a male child is considered to be the savior of the family and as a permanent member of the family, one who will contribute towards family income and take care of aging parents. Such expected roles and identity formation leads to a stratified system where a gender is placed in a hierarchical pattern. Looking from a feminist political ecological perspective, women are seen as primary resource users and managers, and in terms of responsibilities they have towards the dependents in the household and community. Anthropologists, since Margaret Mead and George Murdoch, both belonging to American Anthropological School, have continued to investigate cultural differences in gender. Some of their most interesting findings concern gender and sexuality, which is included in the works of Morgan, Brettel and Sargent. Although all societies distinguish femaleness and maleness, additional gender categories exist in some societies. The Native Americans known as Mohave, for example, recognize four genders: a woman who acts like a man and a man who acts like a woman. In some societies, a third intermediary gender category is recognized. Anthropologists call this category the burdeck, who is usually a man who takes on a woman's role. This intermediary category combines aspects of both femininity and masculinity of the society in which it is found and is thus considered as androgynous gender. Although some people in this category are born as intersexed individuals, which were formerly known as hermaphrodites, meaning they have both genitalia of both sexes, many are born biologically as one sex or the other but adopt an androgynous identity. An example of this intermediary gender category may be found in India, where the Hijra role involves males who wear women's clothing and identify as women. Anthropologists have found another androgynous gender composed of women warriors in 33 Native American groups in North America. Walter Williams, American former professor of anthropology, history and gender studies at University of Southern California, calls these women Amazons and notes that they dress like men and sometimes even marry women. In some tribes, girls exhibit such masculine characteristics from childhood, while in others they may be recruited into Amazonhood. In Casca Indians, for example, a married couple with too many daughters would select one to be like a man. When she is about 5 years of age, her parents would begin to dress her like a boy and have her do male tasks. Eventually, she would grow up to become a hunter. The androgynous genders found by anthropologists remind us that gender is a social construct and not just a biological fact. If culture does affect gender roles, socialization is the process through which culture has this effect. What we experience as girls and boys strongly influences how we develop as women and men in terms of behavior and attitudes. Friends, let us now summarize this lesson. Gender socialization is a lifelong process to provide women and men with social roles that society has considered based on sex. This is deeply influenced by cultural symbolism. Most societies have different roles for expectations for women and men. The main agents of gender socialization include family, media, school and peers. These factors form a child's self-concept and gender identity and teach gender roles to children, making them the main factors in the process of gendered socialization. in different societies. All these aspects are also guided by culture. Thank you.